Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about making claims of policy. Policy basically means the things that should be done, particular ideas or changes or whatever it is, structures that should be adopted. This broadly falls within Aristotle's political rhetoric of his political, forensic, and ceremonial rhetoric, what should or should not. Typically, claims of policy will incorporate terms like should, must, ought, or the inverse, should not. We must not do this, whatever it is. So this is about trying to convince people to make some sort of specific change moving forward in the future. There are a number of elements that go into a successful policy argument. The first thing that you typically want to do in a policy argument is establish that a problem actually exists. So this may draw on claims of fact, which I'll talk about in another video. But basically, you have to establish that there actually is an issue. What is the current situation? What are the constraints of it? What are the characteristics of the current situation? And then you have to establish why it's a problem. And this is where you move toward claims of values, which I've talked about in another video as well. When we talk about claims of values, right, we're talking about whether or not things are good. Are they good, bad, righteous, unrighteous, positive, negative, whatever it is? What makes the current situation bad? What makes the current situation untenable, whatever it is? So this is sort of central to the foundation for a claim of policy. You need to establish that the problem is real, and that the problem actually matters, that it is actually a problem as such. So one of the things you want to always be thinking about with this portion of a claim of policy is who is impacted by this. You need to show that there are real stakes for real people, preferably real stakes for the particular audience that you're writing to, because remember, readers are basically selfish. We are interested in stuff that impacts us, and if it doesn't impact us, we're less likely to be interested. So you want to sort of keep that in mind as you're putting together this discussion of the problem itself. And typically you will start with the problem statement. You will start with establishing the situation that needs some kind of response. Mainly because if you start with the proposed solution, there is always the risk that readers will say, well, but why do we need to do this? And of course, the problem statement, the problem discussion is why you need to do it. Because the current situation, for one reason or another, is unsustainable. It needs to change. We take, for example, arguments for green energy, right? Solar, wind, hydroelectric, whatever it is. If you start by just saying, we should invest more in solar energy technology, people might say, okay, but why? That sounds expensive, that sounds difficult, sounds inconvenient, I don't know if I want to do it. But if you start with, the planet is literally on the verge of cooking to the point where human life may become unsustainable, and we will have driven a mass extinction event. People are like, oh, fuck, that doesn't sound good. What can we do about it? Solar. So this is part of the reason you would start with that. You would start with establishing the problem, is because typically to actually implement a solution to a problem will require some sort of expense, whether that's of money, of time, of labor, inconvenience, whatever it is. People need to be shown or convinced that the expense is going to be worth it. And if you can start by showing that the expense is going to be worth it, they're more likely to be on board with the proposed solution. So that's one of the key things you want to start with. What drives this situation? What is the exigence in rhetorical terms for the change that you're proposing? After that, one of the key things that you definitely need to do is to establish that the proposed solution, the proposed policy, is feasible. This actually can be done. We have the money, we have the resources, we have the time, we have the scientific, technological ability to do it. It's legally, it's legal to do this. It can be done in whatever sort of way. You would need to establish the feasibility of this particular solution. You have to show that it can be done, because if it can't be done, then all you've done is establish that there's a problem without establishing that that problem could be solved. And that's not a good thing, right? You're not going to get people to support you if what you propose as a solution can't be done. If it's not cost effective, if it's illegal, if it's the technology doesn't exist to implement this solution, whatever it is, no matter how good an idea it is, if it can't be done, you're not going to get people on board with doing it. And so that's one of the things that you want to establish in a claim of policy. The other major thing that you want to establish in a claim of policy is the benefits. Why would adopting this solution actually solve the problem? This is really, really important, and sometimes this may feel quite intuitive to a reader, especially if it's a solution that you believe in, right? If it's something that I believe in, that I genuinely have spent time and effort thinking about, and I am convinced that this would work, it may be obvious to me why it would work. But that doesn't mean that it's obvious to readers. And this is a big component of rhetoric and argumentation, is about making sure that your interpretations and your explanations are set up so that other people, readers who are not you, and don't necessarily look at the world in the same way that you look at the world, will be able to actually follow them. So that's a big component. You want to establish the benefits. What good things come from implementing this solution? Who gets to enjoy those good things? How do we know that those good things will happen? You may also approach this partially in terms of what negative consequences do we avoid if we didn't take action? Because this is a very common thing, right? It's often cheaper in the short run to not take action to solve a problem, but in the long run, it may be more expensive. Right now, transitioning to clean energy may seem very expensive, but if we compare that to the costs of massive ecological and infrastructure damage caused by global climate change, those costs are astronomically higher than the costs of making the transition now. And so you want to be able to show there are benefits to this, and those benefits outweigh the benefits of not adopting this solution. The other thing that you want to be thinking about, so I talked about the problem statement, right? I had talked about this, and this isn't just this is a slight sort of shift in the lens of thinking about things. I talked about the problem statement, right? How you need to establish that this problem exists. One thing that you will sometimes be able to capitalize on is that readers may already agree that the problem exists, but they may not agree on what the solution should be, right? So there are a lot of people who agree that global climate change is an issue, but they may not agree on what the solution is. Some people are very much in favor of solar and wind power. Some people think our best policy going forward should be centered around nuclear power, whatever it is. there's different approaches that people take within those different camps, and between them there's other positions, whatever it is. So that's another thing that you want to be aware of when you are making a claim of policy. There may be more potential solutions, more potential policies that could be adopted than just the one you're proposing. And so it will often be worth your time and effort to consider what are the other policy proposals that could exist, and how do I show that mine is a better option than what other people are proposing? A comparative analysis of different potential policy positions. And then you build the argument that your solution is typically some variation of most cost-effective. We get the most benefits, the least expense by doing the thing that I want to do. Here is the evidence for that. Because again, this is one of the things, is right? If there is a better thing to do than the policy that you're proposing, then readers are more likely to want to do that better thing. And that may be, let's just do nothing. This problem is not that significant. The resources needed to solve it exceed the pain of living with the problem. But that may also be, you've proposed X, but Y gets us more benefits for less expense. And so it's going to be hard to convince readers to support X if X costs more and is less beneficial. So these are the kinds of things you want to think about when making claims of policy, claims about what should be done going forward.